Hi there, it's Misty. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to show you how I made this multiple occasions card. I'm making it for a back to school card. The theme this week at Simon Says Stamp Wednesday Challenge is back to school, and we're featuring penny black products. And as you can see from the sentiment I used, this can be used for many different occasions. I'm starting off with some Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, and I'm going to use my mini Misty to stamp this image by Stampers Anonymous called Newsprint and Type. And I'm going to use some fog ink to stamp it. I thought this would be a perfect image to use as the background since it is a back to school card. The die that I had in my hand is called Curved Stitch, and it's by Penny Black. I'm using some removable adhesive to temporarily hold my cardstock down so that I could stamp this image twice. This back to school theme was definitely a challenge for me this week because not only was I making this for boys, but I made two of them. I was making them for middle school aged boys. I made these for, my two boys are starting 6th grade today, Wednesday, and so I was trying to make a more mature card than I might have otherwise if I weren't making this for them. So yeah, so it was definitely a challenge for me. I'm just taking my finger here and rubbing that removable adhesive off the back of my background. I'm using one of my favorite cardstocks to put behind my background here. This is Simon Says Stamp SLATE cardstock, and it pairs really well with the fog cardstock. This die had all these tiny little holes in it, so I just took my craft pick and poked all the pieces out. I really like this die. Our guest designer over at the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday Challenge blog used this die last week and made a really gorgeous card. Her name is Julie, so if you head over to the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday Challenge blog, be sure to check out last week's post as well. I'm using this stamp set by Mama Elephant called Carried Away, and I stamped it 3 times using Ranger Archival Jet Black ink, and I'm stamping it on the Fabriano watercolor paper. I decided to use my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers because I haven't used them very often and I'm still trying to decide how I feel about them. I chose some colors that I thought would go well together, and I will list all the colors that I used over on my blog. So everything was going fine with these markers until I got to the little boy's jacket. It was really interesting. I was using a green marker and a brown color kept coming out in it, and I don't know what I was doing, if it was something I was doing or if it's just in the marker. It seemed to only be on, I think it was only on the jacket that I had this problem. See, it's a green jacket, and I'll have a close-up here in a minute, but once I kind of let go, I really fussed with it because I was trying to get rid of that extra color, but once I let go of trying to change it, I actually really like how it turned out. So I'm just going to keep going over it with the marker and with the water pen until I get it how I like it. Yeah, see, in certain areas it kind of has a brown color to it, but I never touched this marker to the brown marker in the hat, or the brown color in the hat. And I don't think the ink that I used bled. It just didn't look like it just didn't look like it was caused from, an ink that had bled. It was just a really interesting color. I knew I wanted a teal balloon or an aqua balloon, so I started out with a lighter color, and then I'm going to add a darker color once that dries. I kept popping back and forth. I would color the little boy and then give it a second to dry, and then I'd jump back over to the balloon or to somewhere else on the little boy and wait for that part to dry. And then once I'm done with him, I'm going to go back to the balloon with a darker color. Once I added the darker color on the balloon, I actually thought I had ruined it. I was starting to panic a little bit at this point. It just seemed too dark. But then I'm going to keep playing with it until I get something I like. I wasn't quite ready to give up on it just yet. So as I was drying it, I was still thinking it needed something else. It just seemed too plain. So I pulled out my Polychromos colored pencils and I added some detail to it, or some shading. I actually really liked the colored pencils over the watercolor paper because of the tooth in the paper, or the texture. It just, I don't know, just gave it some extra detail to the balloon that I felt it was missing. And the shading was exactly what it was missing. So I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut out my balloon and also the little boy. Now the balloon, I chose to cut it up right up against the black line. And then I'm going to take a black marker and go around the entire border so that way you can't see any of my imperfections. And then for the little boy, I decided to give him just a white border. I think it just looked cleaner for the little boy. I don't know. The stamp set I'm using is by Neat and Tangled, and it's called Awesome. And then I'm using the matching die. I'm using the VersaFine, I think it's Onyx, Black Onyx, VersaFine Black Onyx ink, and I'm stamping it 3 times. I chose this ink because it's a nice crisp ink. I'm using, in my syringe, I have the Nuvo Deluxe Adhesive, and I'm just going to glue these 2 together. I popped it up on some craft foam because I wanted to, the border of this die I thought looked really cool, and I wanted it to kind of have, you know, like the shadow behind it, if that makes sense. It would look really good, you know, with no craft foam, just on the background too, but I thought it would look really, really neat with a little bit of a shadow. And like I said, I ended up making 2 of these, and I almost threw this one away because I wanted the bottom piece, I wanted the Awesome to fit on that bottom piece, and it didn't. So I'm going to cut it out again, but instead of throwing it all away, I just used it for my second card. I mean, these boys are 10, so they're not going to be picking it apart the way I do. Does anybody really critique it the way we critique our own work? I highly doubt it. Unless they make cards themselves, then maybe they do. I think this is when I started thinking about, you know, what if I wanted to throw this one away. See, I'm trying to fit the word awesome there, and I'm just not quite happy with the placement of the word awesome. And I also kind of wanted a thicker gap there in the center. So I went ahead and recut it and put craft foam on this one as well, and did the whole thing over again. Just using my Tombow Mono adhesive here. And this was how I had envisioned it. I wanted it to fit on that bottom portion. So here I'm just taking a Memento black marker, or any black marker will do, and just going around it so you can't see if I didn't quite cut it up to the black line. I chose to use this really thin thread for the string of my balloon because the white twine that's off to the right was just too thick. So the white twine was too thick and this thread was a little too thin. Couldn't really see it going from the balloon to the boy's hand. So I just wrapped it around the base of the balloon there a few times. And then I just taped it to the back. As you saw there, I did an X with that string. And then I'm going to take a separate piece and tape it to the back for the string. But because the string was so thin, I decided to double it up just so you can see it a little bit better. So I just went ahead and taped the 2 pieces of string to the back. And then I'm going to cover the whole back with some adhesive. Find where I want to place it. And then I wanted to do a little twirl with the string. And I was having some troubles with it because it was now 2 pieces of string and they just didn't want to loop together. So I just am going to take a tiny little drop of glue and keep that loop in place. But first I kind of figured out where I wanted the loop and where the strings were going to go to the boy's hand, and then I taped that down first so that it wouldn't keep moving around. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue the boy in place, and then this way I can play around with that loop a little bit and try to get it exactly where I want it. So once I found out where I wanted that loop to be, like I said, I'm just going to take a really small drop of glue and I'm going to place it right behind those 2 pieces of thread. This glue syringe is perfect for this because you can get the smallest drop of glue. And I'm actually going to do it in one more place. I'll do it close to his hand, just because I want it to look like 1 string. And lastly, I'm going to take my Spectrum Noir glitter pen and I'm going to go over the entire sentiment. I'm going to go over the black letters in the balloon and also the white letters in the word awesome. And that's my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this card that I made for the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. All of the supplies that I used are listed and linked in the description below. And if you'd like to see more pictures of this card and how to enter our weekly challenge, please head over to my blog, which I'll also have a link to in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. And while you're there, click on that little bell icon so that you won't miss any of my videos. I post a new video every week. I'll see you next Wednesday with another card and another challenge. Thanks. Bye.